There's a gradual increase over the past 10 or 15 years, but compared to the wealth of contemporary Russian literature, say, or even the back catalogue of what are considered classics in Russian, the amount that gets into English is really pretty meagre.
I'd like to ask how you chose the books for this 37-book long list. What criteria do you have?
Well, we don't really have criteria per se. We invite publishers to submit their translations for the prize, and we don't, at this stage, make any distinction between them. But we then send those books to the judging panel, who will then hone those 37 books down to a short list of about 5 or 6 books. Then we'll select a winner from that.
So the 37 were books that publishers thought were their best translations into English?
Yes, I mean, those 37 books represent, I can't be certain, but we try and make sure that every book that's being translated from Russian into English, every commercial popular fiction book or non-fiction, not necessarily academic prose, but we try and make sure that all those books make it onto the long list. So we chase up publishers that we see that are publishing translations from Russian and ask them to submit.
Now, what are the difficulties in translating from Russian into English? It's a hard language by any measure. Are there any particular things that you've noticed as Rossica's literary coordinator?
Yes, I mean, as someone who occasionally translates from Russian as well myself, I'd say that one of the things that makes Russian particularly difficult is that Russian literature tends to be very interrelated. Books make references to other books, and so books end up having a lot of references, both literary and cultural, that your English readers won't then share, which leaves the translator in a difficult position to decide how to communicate those cultural references. But in terms of the language itself, of course, like all languages, there are colloquial phrases and words. One thinks, for example, sort of like toska, this is the Russian word for a sort of melancholy that doesn't have an exact translation. You come across difficulties like that as well, of course.
Could you tell me a little bit about the judges this year?
As we've had for every year, we have 3 eminent academics to be our judges who have, long experience with dealing with Russian, teaching Russian, translating Russian themselves. So we have Professor Pamela Davidson, Professor Barbara Helt, and Dr. Philip Bullock, who are all very experienced and are now busy working their way through giant boxes of books.
Are they Russian professors at
They're
British?
All professors of Russian literature. So they know the traditions inside out and are very familiar with some of the writers that they're working with and what to expect in translation.
Britain is used to having dozens of prizes for writers, but how does Russia compare? Max Bollinger, a Russian publisher based in the UK, tells us more.
There are several new prizes, and I think it's a very good development, because for a while Russian writing, it wasn't neglected, but there was little available in terms of support for new Russian writers, support for translation work in this area. As a comparison to UK industry, we have something like 100 different prizes. They are all very good prizes. They're given in different categories for different styles of writing, and they offer substantial sums of money, around 10,000. There are prizes that award £50,000. I think it is certainly a great development that we see this prize from Rossica, and I know they have been going for several years now, but it is a fairly new prize, and by the look of the list of the books on this prize, it's certainly becoming a popular prize, and they're offering a fairly reasonable amount, £5,000 for translation. So I certainly think it's a very, very good development. I don't believe that there is enough, actually, prizes for new Russian writing in particular, and we should welcome, I would think, any new development in this area. And we would like to see more. I speak for my own publishing house, but I think I could speak in this area for all other publishers to say that more prizes would be very welcome, and maybe greater values, more money for the writers, more money for the translators, because all these people quite often work in their day jobs and they have to do all this translation work during their spare time.